And just look at the past several weeks. We had over 500,000 people with positive tests 2 days ago. And then just yesterday, I think we were up to almost 500,000 as well. So the mandates don't work. What we did in the NDA, the National Defense Authorization Act, bipartisan legislation, is we know that the White House wants to give our military personnel a dishonorable discharge if they're separated because of their refusal to take the vaccine.
So the mandates have not worked, but they've been prevalent and growing. But it's not okay with many people listening to me right now, especially my next guest, Attorney General Mark Brnovich. He's the Attorney General of Arizona, who has sued the Biden administration twice over these COVID-19 vaccine mandates. And the Supreme Court said this is so important. We're in the middle of a pandemic that we're going to have a special session. We could get a verdict this week. They cannot force private businesses with over 100 people to make their employees get vaccines or be fired, I would think. Mark, welcome back.
Thank you, Brian, for having me on again.
So first off, any word?
Well, the cases will be heard this week, and I learned a long time ago never to predict what a federal judge is going to do, but clearly we think the Constitution's on our side because this is an unconstitutional and unprecedented power grab by the Biden administration, and I think that even the most pro-vaccine advocates cannot in good conscience support these mandates because they're illegal, they're immoral, they're unscientific, and quite frankly, they're unbelievable. It is a dangerous precedent. And we actually have 4 lawsuits going on. 2 of them will be heard by the Supreme Court dealing with the OSHA rules. And this is the whole notion that OSHA has the ability to promulgate these rules to private employers with 100 employees or more, which clearly unconstitutional. And there's also rules dealing with Health and Human Services trying to mandate that healthcare workers, get the vaccine. We also think that's clearly unconstitutional. And we also, just last week, we got an injunction, a lawsuit that we are in dealing with the Biden administration trying to say that if schools get Head Start funding, that the staff, even the volunteers, the kids have to mask up at 2 years and above. So really, Brian, and you know this, I know you've talked about it, this is a radical power grab, and we, whether you're Democrat or Republican, Independent, Green Party, wherever you fall on the political spectrum, this is a dangerous precedent, and we should all be worried about the left's attempt to concentrate so much power in Washington, D.C.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, it's just power, period. I look at this. So New York probably was the first. They just started mandating, this idiot mayor and governor. They mandate you got to get a vaccination. So immediately 3,000 healthcare workers in the state have been suspended, resigned, or fired without pay, without getting unemployment because they refused to get a vaccination. These are healthcare workers. 34 cops told don't come back, unpaid leave. You have a job. Teachers as well. Albany Medical, for example, they suspended 204 of their 11,000 employees. Mount Sinai, 1% of their entire employee base. And New York Presbyterian, fewer than 250, about 250 members were told don't come back. Northwell, 1,400. So I'm looking at this saying we're in a time in which medical workers we hear are being burnt out and overworked. We get it. They can ill afford to lose people who actually know better than anybody else the risks of the virus, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. And this is what's so heartbreaking. And, I spent much of my career as a prosecutor. I used to prosecute gangs. I've worked closely with law enforcement. And in fact, the Phoenix Police Union and the fire departments here joined our lawsuit because I challenged the Biden administration, regarding his ability to try to mandate this vaccine. First lawsuit was filed by me here in Arizona, and they joined us. And the Biden administration, they sent their folks out from DOJ, from, the swamp to argue the case. And they literally they argued. They said, well, there's no harm to anybody because the worst thing that happens, either you get the vaccine or you lose your job. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, my goodness, this is the arrogance of the left. They think that people losing their jobs, losing their health care, losing their benefits, jeopardizing their retirements is not a consequence. It just shows you how out of touch they are and how much power they want D.C. and the bureaucrats to have. And I sit there and I say to myself, you think about all these first responders, all these healthcare workers, whether you're pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine, whatever. I'm pro-Constitution. That's what I am. Yep. And the notion that folks that for the last 18 months jeopardized and sacrificed so much, working in dangerous conditions, now they're going to start losing their jobs and their livelihood and their benefits and their health insurance. It is absolutely despicable. It is unconscionable. Like I said, what they are doing is illegal, immoral, unscientific, and unconscionable.
So tell me how this done. I don't have a law degree, Mark. Did you guys do this in written form, and are they going to debate your written briefs, or is someone arguing this case?
Yes. Well, there's a couple of cases that are active right now, and so yes, you file a lawsuit, and then a federal judge, usually a district judge, will make a decision, and then it goes up to the Court of Appeals. And you may recall what happened with the OSHA mandates. This is the one where we challenged the vaccine mandates on private companies with 100 or more employees. That there was numerous lawsuits filed. So me and some of my other Republican colleagues, folks like Jeff Landry in Louisiana and Schmidt in Missouri. So we all filed lawsuits, and then they were consolidated at the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, and that's one of the cases Supreme Court's hearing. And then the other one, the CMS/HHS mandate dealing with the vaccine mandate for healthcare workers, that was originally filed in the Western District of Louisiana, and we were part of that lawsuit, and that is also will be argued. So there's a bunch of briefing, a bunch of legal, there's paper, but then literally there will be an oral argument on January 7th in front of the U.S. Supreme Court on both of those cases. Meanwhile, and I'm sorry, there's way too much probably detail lawyer stuff, but the dealing with the Head Start lawsuit and whether the Biden administration can mandate staff and volunteers to be required to wear masks, that a judge in Louisiana said that was unconstitutional, and I'm sure the Biden administration is going to appeal that, and we'll see that work its way up in the courts. And we have a lawsuit right here dealing with, we challenged the Biden administration's attempts to require vaccines for all federal workers. So there's multiple lawsuits going on, but I'm pretty sure that the Supreme Court will give us a lot of guidance as to what the federal government can and can't do when it comes to the vaccine based on what happens on January 7th. And the fact that they were willing to take these cases, take them so quickly, and schedule them for oral argument so fast, I think is an indication that the court appreciates how dubious what the Biden administration, what they are doing is, and how important it is to create some certainty.
Right. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I've said this before, and that, at the end of the day, and I know you appreciate this, is that the government doesn't get to be our nanny, and it surely doesn't get to be our doctor. And I don't know at what point in this country where, even the left used to talk about, question authority and, don't give all this power to D.C. and, our healthcare records and information's our own information. And now everyone thinks that it's okay to ask everyone about their healthcare records or health status. There's no dignity or privacy anymore in our own medical decisions. It is crazy. And I just think that, Lyndon Johnson used to say that if you let a bully in your front yard, the next day he's on your porch, and the day after that he's shacking up with your wife. And LBJ used a different term for shacking up, if you know what I mean. This is, a PG show. But the point is that if you allow the federal government to do this, to have this kind of authority, it means that it's that they have all this unquestioned power. And this is what the left wants. They want,
we're seeing it again. And here's the thing. They're doing it now with the booster shot. And we know in Israel they're doing 4 shots. How soon till 4 shots? And I want you to hear what Dr. Oz said. Now they're telling 12 to 15-year-olds, you got to go get a booster. Yeah. They're telling my college, my 2 girls in college, they can't go back to campus without a booster shot. Please tell me the study that says the booster shot's even helping. We got a Secretary of Defense now in quarantine with a booster and 2 shots, and we're walking around with a face shield. Here's Dr. Oz. By the way, a legitimate doctor, cut 8.
Authorizing boosters for kids, 12 to 15. There's no panel involved like they're supposed to. Scientific advisors are supposed to assess whether, for example, there's a concern about myocarditis, which is what held this back the first time. But I actually take it a step back. I think boosters are the wrong challenge for America. We need to focus on adults who need medications. And here's what I do. It's simple. I'm a doctor. I review the data. One size does not fit all when you have a 1,000-fold difference between the incidence of infection and complications in older people versus young kids. We have to be brave enough as conservatives, as Republicans, as Americans, to talk openly about this, to say what we're seeing with our own eyes, to call it like it is. This is inconsistency. It's frustrating the voters in Pennsylvania. Americans all over the country are feeling it. The constantly changing rule book has got to stop.
So the one size fits all by a politician trumps doctors? That's why how important your lawsuit is. There's nothing to do with your party affiliation. You're like fighting for the 4th shot, the 5th shot. Now, if we don't get one annually, our vaccination is going to expire. That's not a vaccine.
Yeah, and you know what the funny thing? It's not funny, Brian, but I go out and I talk to people, and I don't use notes. I call it I don't use a set list. And I was talking to some folks, and someone cut something I said out of context. I basically said, look, if you can still get COVID and you can still spread it, what's the point? And then, you have people on TV, local TV, who said, oh my God, Brnovich wants to get people killed. And my poor mom who, fled communism, lived through World War II's, trying to watch the Wheel of Fortune and sees this teaser on the news that Brnovich wants to get people killed. And it's so patently ridiculous, because this is not just about an experimental vaccine/treatment. It's about how much our individual liberties matter and how many of those the Biden administration will trample in the process. And that's why we are fighting these lawsuits. It's not anti-science. It is pro-Constitution. And as you know, and you pointed this out on your show, the Biden administration has been all over the map. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, get shots. If you get a shot, you're going to, be okay. You can go outside. We're not going to mandate it. They've been all over the place. The only consistency has been their inconsistency. And that's why I think so many people are so apprehensive. And at the end of the day, I wish the left and the Biden administration people would read the New York Times, because even the New York Times, their favorite liberal paper of choice, had an article a couple of weeks ago that Pfizer's got some new treatment that's supposedly 90% effective. And I know last time I was on a show and I talked about antibodies. Why aren't we focusing on antibodies? I had several doctors here in Arizona reach out to me saying, oh my goodness, I'm glad someone's finally talking about this, because you talk about mitigation strategies. Why isn't anyone focusing on, well, wait a minute, there are people out there we know that have had COVID, they're asymptomatic, they have antibodies, they actually have better protection than people that got the booster. So why aren't we looking at people and whether they have antibodies and whether there's other mitigation strategies we can use, including treatments, instead of going right away to vaccines that, apparently, you can still get it and give it.
I hear you. And Mark Brnovich, Attorney General of Arizona. Listen, I tell you, I thought to myself, I know Arizona, I don't live there, but I've been there. I thought to myself that Mark Kelly's probably going to do a good job, because he's a military guy and he understands the danger of the border. And he also, he is a Democrat. I get it. And John McCain would have done a better job. I understand it. But I just said to myself, he's probably going to be a moderate because he wants to get reelected. He wants to get elected. So get his full 6 years. But he's been invisible. It's Kristen Sinema has done all the hard laboring. In fact, it was Tim Scott who had to defend her in an airport. You would think that Mark Kelly would appear with her and say, back off, because we don't agree on this. You cannot physically follow her into the bathroom. You cannot threaten her when she walks down the hall. Instead, he's been invisible. He has not stood up what I thought were the people of Arizona, which at the best was a purple state that used to be a red state. What made him vulnerable enough for you to want to jump in?
Well, Brian, I grew up here in Arizona, and I think one of the things that sometimes people don't understand about Arizona is we have this strong independent streak, kind of that cowboy mentality of, self-reliance.
You were territory.
Ruggedism. Yeah, and I think that even people that weren't born here understand it because they have either friends or, parents or grandparents that understand that Western Barry Goldwater spirit and that mentality of self-reliance, a healthy distrust of the federal government, central authority. And someone like Mark Kelly or someone, from California that moves here, or Kelly from New Jersey, they don't get that. And they don't understand that we have a healthy distrust of, Washington. We don't want to socialize the economy and nationalize our elections. We don't have faith in those institutions back east. And so he never got that. And I think because he never, maybe didn't grow up here, spend enough time here, right, he doesn't understand how important the border is, because we know that even going back to what we were just talking about in the vaccine, you can't have any real conversation about the vaccine until you talk about the border, because we know that the Biden administration even now is talking about test kits and more masks, and yet they're letting people they let people come into the country unvaccinated and then essentially give them free airfare to go all throughout the country. So
Senator, in Pennsylvania and Florida and Texas, it's unbelievable.
A chain's only as good as its weakest link. And so you get we haven't even, you look at what's going on with fentanyl. And I said, I was a gang prosecutor, as a federal prosecutor. We have never seen it this bad in law enforcement. I mean, literally 9 million just in Arizona fentanyl pills seized last year. That's enough to kill our entire state. I mean, 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. And there's 100,000 people died of fentanyl opioid-related deaths this last year in America. Think about this, Brian. That's like 3 times the amount of people who are killed during
Mark,
the
I know.
War.
Yeah, we've been covering it. But you have a lot to do. Listen, you have it's a consequential state, and it's a seat that could turn the Senate. Right now, you're leading the pack. That consists of McGuire, as Lemon, and Blake Masters. Right now, you have the most of the registered voters. So best of luck, Mark. I know you're going to be fired up, and you're going to know the issues, and I hope you win this lawsuit, not for you or the party, but for the country. Mark Brnovich, thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian. It's all about the principles. Thank you.
Absolutely.